Hello everyone. Today we are going to talk about identifying the subject, verb, and object in a sentence. And then we are also going to talk about subject-verb agreement. Now, as far as subject, verb, and object goes, every sentence in the English language has a subject and a verb. Some sentences also have an object. Now, the subject of the sentence is the person or thing that does the verb, so who or what the sentence is about. The verb is the action that is taking place in the sentence, and the object is the person or thing that is acted upon by the subject. So we have someone doing something to someone, subject, verb, object. In this example, we have the boy chased the ball. We always want to start with identifying the verb when we are trying to find the subject, verb, and object. Usually it's easiest to find the verb first. So we'll start by identifying the action. The action is chased in this sentence. Now, in order to figure out who the subject of the sentence is, we need to figure out who is doing the chasing. In this case, the boy is the one who is chasing. The boy is the one doing the verb. Therefore, the boy is the subject of the sentence. They are who the sentence is about because they are the one doing the verb. Now, the boy is chasing the dog. Because the dog is not doing the verb, it is receiving the verb, it is the object being acted upon, it is therefore the object of the sentence. So again, a quick rundown of this is start by identifying the verb, which is the action, and then figure out who or what is doing the action. In this case, it's the boy. Who or what is doing the action is going to be the subject of your sentence, and then you'll look to see if anyone is being acted upon, if anyone is receiving the verb. In this case, it's the dog. Now, those who are receiving the verb or being acted upon, they are the object of the sentence. Now, beyond subject, verb, and object, we also need to address subject-verb agreement. So in every sentence in English, our subject needs to agree with our verb. And more simply, what that means is if we have a subject that is plural, so we have more than one person or thing involved in the subject of our sentence, well, then our verb needs to match that. And I'll show you some examples. First off, like I mentioned, we are going to be discussing singular and plural as we talk about subject-verb agreement. So singular means there's just one thing. For instance, girl, man, dog. In those examples, there's one girl, there's one man, there's one dog. Plural means that we have more than one. So girls, men, dogs. In all of those instances, there's more than one noun being described. When we talk about subject-verb agreement, we need to look at whether or not our subject is plural or singular, and then whether or not our verb is plural or singular. Here are some examples. The man at the table was talking on the phone. We have one man, so we are going to use the word was. In our second example, we have the men at the table were talking on their phones. In this case, we have multiple men, and so we are going to now use the word were. So you can see here that our verbs are going to change in English based on how many people or how many things are in the subject position of the sentence. Now, to move forward, when we're talking about subjects and how they are plural or singular and verbs and how they are plural or singular, we need to look at what makes something plural in English. So to make a noun plural in English, we typically just add an S to the end of the word, which you're probably already familiar with. But what people are less familiar with is how to make a verb plural. And it's interesting, in English, to make a verb plural, you actually do the exact opposite of making a noun plural. And what I mean by that is to make a noun plural, you add an S to the end of the word. To make a verb plural, you are going to drop the S at the end of the word. Let me show you some examples. The students in Biology 1010 usually goes on a field trip each spring. That is incorrect, because what we have here is students, and that's plural. But our verb, goes, has an S on it, which means that it is singular. And it's really complicated here because they're opposites, right? A noun that has an S is plural, but a verb that has an S is singular. So in order to fix that, what we would need to say is the students in Biology 1010 usually go on a field trip each spring. The easiest way for me to think about this is that you can only have one S in your sentence. It can either be on the subject, the noun, or it can be on the verb, but it cannot be on both. So you can see our incorrect sentence has an S at the end of students and an S at the end of goes, and that is a problem for us. Our correct sentence only has an S at the end of students, not on go, which means that we have correct subject-verb agreement. Now, if you have a problem here where you have students and goes and those don't match, one is plural and the other is singular, that is incorrect subject-verb agreement, and that would need to be revised. Here's another example. In the trunk of my car resides 15 water bottles. Now, this is a tricky example because what we have done is we have moved the subject to the end of the sentence. The water bottles are the ones who are doing the action. They are the ones doing the verb. They are the ones that are residing, not the trunk of the car. Therefore, we need to look at the water bottles to figure out whether they are singular or plural. In this case, they are plural. There's more than one. And because there's an S on bottles, because they are plural, there should not be an S on reside. That should not be plural. It should be singular. And so what we need is in the trunk of my car reside 15 water bottles. Now this is tricky because sometimes the subject comes at the end of the sentence, and that is what can really mess us up. It is really natural to look at this sentence and say, okay, the trunk of my car must be the subject because it comes first. And that's not necessarily the case. It's important to remember that the subject of your sentence is simply the noun that is doing the verb. So again, in this case, water bottles is doing the verb, reside. And because we have an S on bottles, we should not have an S on reside. Bottles is plural. And then we're going to make that verb plural by taking the S off. So it kind of looks singular, which is what I mentioned before. But in actuality, you'll remember that in order to make a verb plural, we're going to take off the S. You can only have that one S. And for our sentence, the S is already on bottles. Now things get even trickier when sometimes we have multiple subjects. Here's an example. Either the class officers or the faculty advisor makes the final decision. Now this is tricky because class officers is plural, but faculty advisor is singular. And so now we run into an issue of should we have an S at the end of makes, yes or no? Well, here's the rule. If you have two subjects like we do here, and you have the word or between those two subjects, then you are going to match your verb with the subject that it is nearest to. In this case, faculty advisor. Faculty advisor is singular. It does not have an S at the end of it, which means that our verb should also be singular. Now, to make a verb singular, we are going to add an S to the end. So we are going to use the word makes in this situation. Now, if the role was reversed and we said either the faculty advisor or the class officers make the final decision, in that case, because class officers is now closer to our verb, we're going to use that subject in order to determine our subject-verb agreement, and we would no longer have an S at the end of make. Here's another example, but this one is slightly different because in this example, we use the word and instead of or. And what that does is it creates a compound subject. So in our sentence, we see the class officers and the faculty advisor make the final decision. In this case, we have a compound subject. We have two that have been combined. That and combines our subjects. And so now, because we have more than one subject, we have class advisors and faculty advisor, that's a lot of people. We need a plural verb. And you'll remember that a plural verb does not have an S at it on the end of it. So we are going to use the word make. So again, to review, if you have two subjects and you have the word or between them, you are going to use the subject that is closest to the verb. In this case, there's only one faculty advisor. There is not an S at the end of the subject. Therefore, we're going to put the S at the end of the verb. In this case, though, we use the word and when we use the word and, we are combining subjects to create a compound subject. When that happens, we are going to use a plural verb, and you'll remember that a plural verb should not have an S at the end. So to sum up, today we have talked about subject-verb agreement, and we've also talked about identifying the subject, verb, and object in a sentence. You could go back through the video if you're still confused, but it's important to remember that your subject should match your verb. If your subject is plural, your verb should be plural as well. If your subject is singular, your verb should be singular as well. Thank you so much for watching.